So this called for SF101 to back your lining with for your bag. Okay, so that's our lining. And then in addition to putting the SF101 on it, we also put a fusible vinyl over the top of it to make it so that we could reuse this little snack bag. And this is like a great size for apple slices, things like that. But what happens with that is we end up with fabric, we end up with SF101, we end up with vinyl, and we end up with more fabric from the front. So when we go to actually turn it, it's a little bit hard and can be difficult on hands. So I'm going to go ahead and use the SF101 in class today because that's what you guys got in your kits. But I want to show you this one. This one's called, this is a Pellon product. It's called P44F. So for this, the FB Fusible. For this is not something you would use for like a tiling scene that you're going to put a lot of embroidery on, but this gives you also, it stabilizes so that your fabric becomes a little bit more stable for the technique that we're doing, but it doesn't add any weight. So if you look at this in one hand and you look at this in the other hand, you can definitely see the difference in the weight. So I always have this around as well. And this is really, really, really inexpensive. But you can also see that it's not a woven. It's actually a non-woven interfacing where if you look at your SF101, you can see the warp and the weft is actually a woven interfacing, meaning it has threads in it. So that's the one thing that I looked at mine when I did my sample yesterday. And then the other thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to do my bag with cam snaps, and you might want to use the sew on snaps if you want to. If you're going to use the sew on snaps, then you can go ahead and I'll mention it as we're stitching. If you're going to use the sew on ones, you can go ahead and let those little marks sew out for placement. If you're going to use the cam snaps, we're going to skip that. And I'm going to mention it as well when we're stitching, that if you're going to use your cam snaps to snap your bags shut, you're going to skip that because it's not, if you poke a hole there, it's not going to be the right place for your cam snap. It's going to be hanging off the side. And then a clapper. So we're going to be doing some pressing while we're in the hoop. We're also going to be doing some pressing when we get it out and we get ready to turn it. So between grading a seam, which I'll show you when we get there, and using a clapper on it, you're going to get a really razor sharp press on your seams, which actually is going to help you in the long run when you have to turn things. This is what we call a double turn because you have to turn it right side out from the lining side, and then you have to turn it right side out again so you get the lining on the inside and the regular fabric on the outside. So this is going to come in really handy. And this size is nice because looky, fits right in your 5x7 hoop. So at my house, I have about 5 or 6 of these in different sizes. I use them continuously just because I like that really clean edge. I mean, there's an example right here of how nice and flat that pressed when I pressed it by using a little clapper on it when I was doing it. And that was this guy. So I think, let's see where we are here. I think we're going to go ahead and get started, ladies. So let's look at your kits. Oh, you know what? I need 1 more minute. I need to run grab the directions. I left them on my desk. So I'll be right back. We'll give some others a few minutes to get back with us. Let's go for 8. And then if I need it with some but I need to have the white out. Oh, I also need I need an embroidery.
So, and that's what I need to like do that, and then I'm gonna need some random matching generic. One of them I never know. Okay. That's what I could probably look at the detailed plans, but honestly, we always try to get the best.
Okay, I'm back. Did we get any more? Looks like not. So I guess it's just you and me, kiddos. All right, so we're gonna start by opening up our kit and taking a peek at what's in there. So you have two pieces of fusible vinyl. Those are the things with the little the squares on the back. You have 2 pieces of SF101. You have your stabilizer, and I'm doing the one in class for the 5x7 hoop this morning. And so your little snacky bag will be about this size. Again, apples, a couple pretzels, maybe some almonds. Looks like pretty good size for that. As always, I'm going to begin by hooping my stabilizer. You know what, I'm gonna, since you're looking at the back of my head, we'll just have you look at the machine. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hoop my stabilizer, because we know that step's coming no matter when we start. So this project, if you haven't done this before, this project is actually going to sew a positioning line that you're going to cut open so that you can tuck things into that hole. So for this project, please make sure that you're hooped relatively snug, so that you don't get any of your stuff. I mean, you don't have to crank it down with a screwdriver, but just check and make sure you're in there pretty tight. And you'll find yourself kind of grabbing the sides a couple of times as we stitch to kind of pull out that slack. It's hard to keep that really smooth and tight when you're going to be cutting a hole in it, but we're going to do our best. So I'm going to start by looking at that directions, because that's always a good place to start, right? All right, so I have thread here. I do not have glide thread. So Jeannie, I think, posted in the supply list, and so I'll read it back to you one more time. If you're using glide, these are the colors that you will need: black, linen, aloe, brunette, wildflower, and seafoam. I am just using black, white, red, 2 greens, and a brown for the stem. So and then you'll also need some applique scissors. I've got 2 kinds here. I've got the double curve Fomores, and I've also got the straight curves. I'm going to use, or the single curve, which is a straight blade. This is what I'm going to use for grading my seams when I'm done, and my project comes out of the hoop. And grading your seams, it really is just it's a technical term for not cutting everything at exactly 1/4 of an inch, so that your seams are all your layers of fabric are all coming together at the same place. We're going to look at some of it, and we're going to trim like the lining part where the vinyl is. We're going to trim that just a tad closer than 1/4. We're going to go really close to the cutaway stabilizer, so that essentially it falls in layers. So think of I guess what you can really kind of compare it to is think of a haircut. If somebody has a blunt haircut and they have a bob, all the thickness of their hair is all at the same place. If they have layers, then the hair falls in layers, and it's not usually as thick at the bottom. This still has the same amount of hair. It just is not It's layered. So what we're going to do is we're going to layer our seams rather than cut them blunt. All right. If you have any questions, I am watching the chat box to the best of my ability, but if I miss it, no worries. All right. All of you got one of these little tools when you got your sewing machine. You have no idea what it is if you've never used it, but it's going to make your life much easier when you have to install rivet snaps, anything like that. It's actually a teeny tiny hole punch. And so I'm going to be using this to punch the hole for my cam snap. And why is that relevant? Well, if you have a big enough hole there for your cam snap to go through to the other part that you're trying to seal, it's going to be much easier on your hand and you're going to get a much more permanent seal on your cam snap. It's going to be a little bit sturdier. It's going to last a little bit longer if you're not trying to include all the layers of fabric in that hole. So I'm going to be using this. The same hand press that I was going to bring to the store today that I forgot this morning. I also have a set of dies that does the same thing. I have these that can screw in the top and I just press down and I can just punch holes all day long. All right. I always like to mention that because I know some of you will do lots and lots and lots of things that require cam snaps, that require rivets, that require things that are really hard on our hands as we get older, to squeeze. And, I don't know about you, but at the end of the day, I'm going to use what strength I have in my hand for what I really like to do, not putting on snaps and rivets. So I'm going to have a tool that does that for me. And then then I don't have to, I have more strength, left for the stuff that I really like to do. All right. So I am on page 5. If you're following along on your directions. Yep. So we're going to begin by ironing the fusible backing to the wrong side of the lining front and the lining back fabrics. So these are my linings. One is longer, one is shorter. So the lining front is the shorter one. The lining back is the longer one. So I'm going to go ahead and heat my iron up here in preparation. If you want to give a little bit of a best press on your fabric as you press it, that's fine. I usually do, but today I'm going to try to do it without it because I want to keep that seam as easy to turn as possible. I'm pretty sure you do too. These are really fun little bags. You could use them for more than just snacks. If you didn't want to have to use the vinyl on there, you could use it for earbuds, to put earplugs in for your iPhone or your Android phone, your wireless earbuds, regular earbuds, even cords. I mean, it's a nice size little bag to throw in your purse for a lot of stuff. Doesn't have to have the Apple on it. Doesn't have to have the fusible vinyl on it. All right. So I'm going to start. This is my bag front. So the white's your bag front or the off-white. Move this out of the way here. And I'm going to get my 2 pieces of SF101. Looks like my iron's hot. And I'm going to go ahead and, that's my back. Let's do my front here. I'm going to go ahead and fuse. So to fuse, you don't really, the iron doesn't really need to move around a lot. You just need to hold it for like 5 to 8 seconds. Shift to another location, hold it for 5 to 8 seconds. And shift to another location, 5 to 8 seconds. No. You're melting the glue is what you're doing. So you don't need to really, you're not ironing, you're pressing. All right, let's set that over there. It's always going to hold better if you let it cool off a little bit before you handle it a lot. excuse me. All right. So now we're gonna peel the protective paper from the iron-on vinyl. And it says save the protective paper, so make sure you save it. All right, so and the other tip I want to give you is normally when I do this kind of vinyl, I don't use a goddess sheet. I use parchment paper. Today, I'm just going to be using the paper that the vinyl is stuck to as my transfer. And here's why. I want you to think about baking. If you have, when we first got Teflon baking pans, we all did cookies on Teflon baking pans, only to find out that the cookies browned more on the bottom on the Teflon pan. And then we started baking cookies on top of parchment paper, and the cookies didn't brown as much. So a Teflon pressing sheet will conduct heat. In other words, it intensifies the heat. Parchment paper deflects it. So in other words, it's not as hot. So the same applies when you're doing heat transfer vinyl or any kind of vinyl. Unless it calls specifically for a Teflon sheet, you can just use parchment paper as your pressing sheet in lieu of that. Today, I'm just going to be using this paper that is on top of my vinyl. I'm going to put the Teflon sheet underneath it only because I don't want to stick any of the vinyl to the furry mat here, to the wool mat. But on top of where the heat goes on top of this, I'm going to use the actual paper itself. All right, so I'm going to I've got my dark or my larger piece here. I'm going to go ahead and peel this off. Now remember, don't throw these papers away even when you're done. And I usually fold in half and start in the center and then let it fan out. Nope, I didn't go quite to the center there. And then kind of smooth it out with my hands. And then I'm just going to put this paper on top of it. And I'm going to press with the paper. So it's 3 to 5 seconds. And I turned the iron down to medium. If yours is on hot, go for the 3 second. And again, we're not doing this. We're just simply pressing. And this is definitely a cool peel. So you want to let it cool before you mess with it too much. So I'm just going to leave that there. And I'm going to just turn my goddess sheet around for the other side. So this kind of vinyl comes in a couple of different types. What you have today is the shiny vinyl. You can also get a matte see-through vinyl. Depends on what you're working on, I suppose. If you want it matte or if you want it shiny. All right, so I'm just going to take this and set it aside for right now. And I'm going to let that cool. I'm just going to get these pressed so that they're ready to go when I need to use them. So anytime you're affixing any type of vinyl coating or working with any kind of vinyl heat transfer or otherwise, it's definitely no steam. So you want to save that for when it counts, because the vinyl, all it's going to do is going to get cloudy and look like it's a steamed up mirror in your bathroom. All right. So you should have done ironing on the fusible backing to the wrong side. And actually done the vinyl application that we just did. And we're going to leave, I'm leaving my protective paper on top of it. So here it says press and hold a hot iron protective paper 8 seconds. 8 seconds sometimes is enough to give you kind of a crackly, muddy, bumpy kind of look to your vinyl. So that's why I said go ahead and go 3. You're also letting it cool. So if you look at this, I have a nice smooth surface where my vinyl is applied with no bumps. So up to you. You can try and do it longer if you feel like it's not adhering correctly. But just know that it goes from not adhering correctly to wrinkled and shrunk very quickly. So always watch while you're doing it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead now and move away from the table. I'm going to put the camera on the machine, which will make it much easier for me to see your smiling faces, and your messages are on the chat box. So hang on. Let's see if I can do it right, ladies. Okay.
Lost the picture.
Yes, I turned it off intentionally when I was moving.
Sorry.
I didn't want you to need Dramamine. And then my cord got stuck in the chair. So I had to untangle. But I'm back. All righty. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my embroidery design. If you're using the USB that you got from Kimberbell, you know we're looking for the embroidery files for event day, or maybe you just got one. I think on this one you just get one, and it's 2 sizes. I'm using the 5x7. If you got a bigger kit and you're using that one, that's okay too. But don't pick the 8x12 unless you got an 8x12 kit, because you'll be disappointed. And then set. All right. So I've got my stabilizer hooped. I am using a 7511 needle today for embroidery. I am using a pre-wound bobbin, several of them actually. I'm trying to use up the little bits and bobs that we have left over from other projects here on the pre-wounds. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use, let me check this. You can put this vinyl on any cotton cloth. Yes, you can. You can use it on anything. I've actually used it on candy bags. So yeah, I use it on everything, anything that I want. I've used it on linings for tote bags that I put like beach towels and stuff in, so that it doesn't get wet. All right. So we are looking at, so I refer to the numbers as steps, and then you'll also see, I'll say like color stop 1, color stop 2. And that refers to the number that's up here. So that's the number of the thread changes, or shape of that. And then this, I'll refer to the actual step. So we are on page 5, step 5. We have hooped it. So we're actually on step 6. We loaded the design. And now what we're going to do is stitch the cut line. I'm looking ahead to see what I'm going to sew with so that I don't have to change whites first. So I'm going to go ahead. I like to look ahead when it's a line that I'm not going to see when I'm done. So if it's, if it's a line that's going to get hidden somewhere in the project, I try to look ahead to the next color stop so that I don't have to change threads as many times. I'm kind of lazy that way. Maybe you are too. That's not changing threads, not the fun part of doing embroidery. The fun part is watching it all develop. Okay, So we are going to run color stop 1. So you'll see down there, color stop 1, and we're going to stitch the cut line.
It's not lazy, it's efficient.
Efficient? Well, efficient works too then. Really though, I think I'm just lazy. All right, so on this cut line, I'm going to move you guys over to the table again so that you can see this, because this is going to establish an actual opening in the stabilizer that we'll be able to push layers through when we want to stitch on something and not stitch on something, so that you can actually do an in the hoop bag that's lined and turned and everything at the same time. So let me just flip this over to the table this time. I'm just going to cover it. So what we're going to do is actually, and I know mine's hard to see because it's white thread, but refer to the picture, step number 8, is we're going to cut about a 1/2 inch extending on each end. So you're going to go close to the side over here. See how it's like your 1/2 inch is going to be almost to the edge of your hoop here, not quite so much on that side, but you're going to cut all the way through right on that line. It doesn't matter if the thread falls out, it's just a marking place where you're going to cut. And about extending about a 1/2 inch. All right, so I'm gonna put this back on the machine. And I am going to stitch the bag front placement line. So remember, the front parts are the shorter parts. So we're gonna need the bag front, which is going to be the white or off-white. So we're gonna stitch that placement line first. And then we're gonna place this down, tape it, or in this case, I am actually going to use a little of the spray based and my my dime tent. I will use tape in other areas, but for this, I don't need tape. It's the whole piece. So I'm gonna just give it a light spray and stick it down there. And then we're gonna stitch the bag front tack down line. Okay, here we go. All right, so I still have the white thread in. I'm going to go ahead and stitch that placement line. All right, so I'm going to take the shorter piece is the bag front. I'm going to take that and I'm just going to put a little KK100 spray on the back of it. If you want to use tape to tape yours, that's perfectly okay. All right, so placement is kind of specific with this. The placement should be the bag front right side, fabric right side up. The top edge of the fabric should cover the cut line. So this is our cut line. We know that the top edge of our fabric needs to cover that cut line. So I usually fold up to make sure I'm good side to side. And then I know I've covered it here. Let's see how and I've covered it there. And then just to double check, I'm going to fold up and I can see I have pretty much equal amount. When I get down to the bottom, I still have at least 1/4 of an inch. I could move it down a little bit. Maybe I'll do that. A little bit. Looking good. Okay. So I'm happy with where mine is. I'm going to go ahead and run the stitch bag front tack down line. So step number 11, color stop number 3.
Michelle, the bag front is the shorter piece, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'm on step 12, color stop number 4, and that's the apple placement line. I'm going to go ahead and change out to my red thread. All right, say bye-bye, page 5, and flip over to page 6. So what we are doing is we're placing the apple leather right side up, and we're going to cover that with the wash away topping. I missed the wash away topping when I went through the packet there because it's clear, it's hard to see. These I am going to use tape for because I'm going to have to trim around it, and I don't want to put sticky stuff on something I'm going to have to trim close to, because I probably won't get it exactly where I need it. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use transport tape, but Kimberbell tape works well. OESD tape works well. Whatever you usually use will be great. Although I do like the transport. I like it because this girl really hates it if she doesn't position the tape correctly and it gets a few stitches on it and I have to pick stitching out of tape. The transport tape breaks away from it a little bit easier than the paper tape does. I just try to be really careful and tape outside the coloring lines. So I'm coloring outside the lines. All right, and my top. Okay, don't pull that topper off yet. Don't trim yet. We still have to do the face. So we have done steps 13, 14, and 15. If you have your tack down. Step 16 is we're going to stitch the apple face detail. So I'm going to use black. I'm going to unthread my red here and put my black on.
What's up? Oh, did you have a question for me?
So on this particular part of the apple's face and the lettering, if you have fine line or any other 60 weight thread that you actually use for fine details, now's a great time to use it. You don't really have to change your bobbin thread. You can just put that 60 weight fine line on there. It kind of gives you a little bit crisper details. All right, so now I'm going to remove my my topper and trim my red. So for this, I'm going to use the double curves.
What do you think about this? We got purple, orange, light purple. Looks good to me. Looks good to you? Okay, we got mine in here. Okay. Scraps means nothing.
I love these little nippers with the little curve on the edge. I'm going to get in there between his eyeballs and trim that jump stitch. If you haven't added a pair of these to your embroidery journey, I'm telling you, you need one. So what they are is they've got little curved on the ends. And so you can get underneath things and you can get really up close to things. So I really love them for that. All right, I'm going to get that apple trimmed up now.
He doesn't do that.
All right. He's kind of a cute little guy. He'll look better when he gets his stem on, I'm sure. Okay, moving back over to the sewing machine. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, so we are looking at step number 18. And we are still using the black. Oh, no, we're using the dark green for this. Sorry about that. Dark green. My print didn't come out that well. So I'm going to go ahead and change to the dark green. Again, this is another place that if you have 60 weight thread, you'll get a little bit sharper look to your lettering.
Hey, Michelle,
Yes,
do you sell the 60 white at the store?
we do. It's called Fine Line. It's right up on that front table.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we have some. But so we also sell yeah, that's the only 60 weight. I was going to say you could use the Deco Bob that's like 80 weight. So if you have really tiny letters, really small. So here's how I define tiny letters. If I'm doing lettering on anything, any letter that's smaller than 1/4 of an inch tall gets a lighter weight thread. So 60 weight is usually my first choice, but if I don't have the color that I'm looking for in 60 weight, I will go ahead and use the 80 weight thread. Just keep in mind, if I'm using like the Deco Bob 80 weight, if I'm using that, I am going to wind a little bit of a bobbin because my bobbin thread on a pre-wound is normally about 60 weight. So you can see how you'd end up with a, with an uneven situation there. So I would I would usually wind just a little bit of that color if I'm using the 60 weight, I don't wind a bobbin. I just use the pre-wounds. But if it's black lettering, I might use a black pre-wound, just so I don't have any little white dots in it anywhere. So even on this step, it says on 18 to change the bobbin thread to match the top thread. With regular 40 weight thread, you can see I did not do that. And I'm not having any white show through because I still have that inequality between the weight of the bobbin thread and the weight of the top thread. So, and I know that the line, so I looked at this and I looked at it a couple of times. I'm like, yeah, the lining is going to cover it. So I really don't know that I need, because I am using 40 weight thread for this. I don't know that I actually need to change the bobbin. So it was kind of just an executive decision there. If you changed your bobbin out to green, that's perfect. But in this case, I didn't have to. And if you're using 60 weight, you may have wanted to change to green. I usually don't. If I again, lazy. If I need to, I will, but if I don't need to, I usually don't. Black seems to be the one color that is really hard to not get a few white polka dots showing through a bobbin thread. So that one I normally will always change to a black bobbin. I'm doing black. Just makes life easier.
Just fits under the maximums for like
All right. So now we are going to change. If you changed to a green bobbin, you can change it back to your neutral or white bobbin at this point. And we are going to do the little stem detail. So that's with your lighter, your lighter green color. Not light enough to show. No, that'll look better. Then we're going to just do that little stem detail there. And now we get to do the little stem at the top of the apple. So go ahead and change out back to your neutral colored bob, or you are your neutral bobbin. I'm sorry, there was somebody joining. I had too many things going on at one time. Go ahead and change to whatever brown color you selected for the stem of your apple there. All right. So at this point, we are on step 21. So I'm going to go pretty slow through these next steps because some of you may never have done a project that has you flip and fold things to the backside while you're doing the embroidery. You've had it where you've done it at the end, but not during. So I want you, all of you, to grab your tape, because this one's a step you're going to tape, and grab the lining fabric right side. So it's going to be the same size as this bag front. It's just going to be the lining, and set the paper aside so that we can use it later. All right, so we're going to take this and we're going to put it right side down. Okay, what is really specific here is the top edge should be approximately 1/4 of an inch above the cut in the stabilizer. So look under there and peek. This line is a little bit, that's stitched here on your white fabric, is a little bit below the cut line. Okay, so if you fold it back, you can see that there's a little bit of stabilizer there. You want this to be 1/4 of an inch above that cut line. So I'm going to lift this back. Let me turn it this way so it's easier to see. Okay, so now I'm backwards. So here's my cut line right here. I want to make sure that my red is 1/4 inch, at least 1/4 of an inch above that cut line. And then I'm going to tape it. All right, I turned it around. And then you should actually have enough to cover the bottom too. So if you're not, if it's really looking short to you, double check that top and make sure that you have 1/4 of an inch above the cut line. All right, so they should be right sides together. So you should be looking at the wrong side of your red lining fabric on the front side of your hoop. And then go ahead, and if your iron timed out, go ahead and start your iron up again. This one's going to get pressed. Just to medium, because we're going to have the vinyl there. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to run the front seam line where it's going to turn, to the other side. So go ahead and put that back on. And again, this part should be 1/4 of an inch above the hole that you cut. And your bottom should be covering the bottom of your bag. This is the shorter piece, not the longer piece. So if you have more than this, look back, you should still have the longer piece. The longer piece is about an inch taller. So make sure you have the correct piece. All right, so we're going to run that line. I didn't change thread because you're not going to see this, but if you want to change to the red, you can. All right, so I'm going to meet you at the table. We're going to take the hoop off of the machine. We're going to do this together. Let me grab my pressing mat, get it close enough to the edge here.
Do you mind if I have her reach over your shoulder?
All right, so this is what you should have. I'm going to take my tape off now. So they should be right sides together. And I'm going to pull the tape off. Now remember, you have vinyl on this all the way around. No place in any of this next pressing process should that iron come in contact. Should that iron, did I get her? No. All right, So at no point in this pressing process, on the next couple of steps, should your iron come into contact with the front of this fabric. So we're going to flip the lining up at the stitching line. But before that, we're going to do our first grading of seams. So we're going to trim this. I'm going to get the straight ones. You do you, I'm going to do me. If you're afraid to do this, don't worry about it. It's just going to make everything nice and flat for me. And it's going to be much easier to turn. So I'm going to grade this to about 1/8 of an inch above that stitching line that I just stitched. See there? So that's what a graded seam looks like. It's a little bit smaller, and usually the heavier seam is the one you want to grade. So since this has got everything on it, this is going to be the heavier one. All right, so I've just got that graded a little bit. I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see it. See, I just graded it a little bit. All right. So now my next step is to press this up and either finger press or press this seam. This is where I want to get a nice sharp, because I'm going to be folding this into that hole. And this is going to make, where's the line I was making? Where's my sample here? Somewhere here. Yeah. This is actually going to be that press line that I showed you that was so razor sharp. So I'm taking the paper, I'm putting the paper over the vinyl where I'm going to be pressing. And then I'm going to be very careful that I'm not pressing on top of the, you can put something there too. Let's take the bigger piece and we'll put that there. So we're covering actually the apple as well, because we don't want to put that, any heat on that either. So then I can, get it warm with my iron, because I want a nice seam there. Get it warm. And then while it's warm, I'm going to take my pressing block and I'm just going to press down just so that I get a nice, really sharp edge there. And it's going to help when you have to turn it later too. The least amount of fabric that you get in there when you have to turn, the better off you're going to be. All right. So everything's all cool. I didn't melt my apple. I have a nice sharp edge there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck the lining fabric through the cut line in the stabilizer. So I could probably trim some of this, but I'm not even going to worry about that. So, but this is going to get tucked through that hole. Here's the hole to the back side of my hoop. All right. So look how nice look how sharp that is. All right, from the front, I'm not seeing any red that's showing through to the front. And then I'm going to give it a little press again so that it's nice and sharp on that edge. And I'm still going to use my paper because I still have my apple there. And if I get negligent in any way, my apple's going to get fried. So this one's a little bit easier now. And then again, my iron's on medium. And then the same thing, I'm just going to use my little pressing to make sure that while that's warm, I can make it nice and flat. These are just those little things that take your project just a step above. All right, there we go. We got that. So where we should be right now is we've done the seam here. I've graded my seam allowance. We've pressed it up and then poked it through the hole that's there. And then let's look at the next page. Now we're going to tape it to the back of the hoop. And yes, I do use tape. Just make sure that the tape you're using is sticking so that when you start to stitch, it doesn't end up curling off and sticking to the bed of the machine, because, we've all had that happen. And usually what happens is whatever we tape down goes with it. All right, there's that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff.
All right. And again, sorry, I'm taping as far out to the edge as I can, because frankly, I don't want to have to unstick it. And pick lettering, okay. All right, so turn to the front. I've already pressed that, but if you haven't, give it a press. Make sure you cover the apple. Don't throw your papers away yet. This is my ultimate favorite embroidery iron because the ellipsis shape of it, or the eggshell shape, whatever you want to call that, fits inside a 5x7 hoop, making it very easy to press in the hoop items as you go along. A lot of times that's the only time you get to press, because when it's done, you can't get to that same place to press when you've taken it out of the hoop and turned it right side out. Okay, I'm going to do a little trimming here. It's up to you. I'm going to get rid of those jump stitches. So I'm going to take this guy, make use of that little hook. All right, I got a couple more. I can get those later, but at least the ones that are bugging me are gone. All right, back to the sewing machine. All right, let's see what our next step is.
Would you want to do something like that?
All right, so we are on step number 27, which is stitching the lining front tack down. So it's going to stitch the lining to this front. And for that, I am going to switch to white thread, since I'm going to see it more on the outside of the bag than the inside of the bag. All right, so see how my thing is a little bit loose there? I'm just going to pull it from the side of the hoop a little bit, just to flatten it out a little bit. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and begin color stop 11, which is going to tack down the lining to that front piece. Including along that little top edge that we pressed so carefully. All right, so the next step is it's gonna stitch out my placement line for the other lining for the other piece of lining. All right. So grab your other piece of lining fabric. Remember, keep those little pieces handy. The paper for later. All right. So with this, I want to completely cover this placement line and the front. So just kind of carefully position it so that you're covering the front and you're covering that positioning line that we just stitched. And go ahead and tape if you like. I guess I should, no, I'm going to take the tape off the bottom now. only because if it catches later, although it's still pretty sticky. How many of you have had that happen where you think you taped something securely only to hear a funny noise and then see that your tape is curled up in a ball stuck to the bottom of your machine and the thing that you taped down is no longer taped down and it's sewn in a different place? Yeah, I had that happen a couple of times. At least all of us have had those. That if you've been embroidering for any length of time, you pretty much had all of the ifs, ands, or buts that could happen. All right. So now we are looking at your lining is right side up. So you should be looking at the front of your hoop with your lining on the top. And it's completely covering the placement line that just stitched in the previous step. And we're going to stitch the lining back tack down. I'm going to go ahead and change to red for this. I don't have to, it's going to get covered, but just in case I can see a little of it after the fact, I would like that little bit to be red.
No.
And go ahead and stitch that color stop number 13. It's just going to sew the same over the same positioning line that we just stitched. Okay, so it says change the bobbin thread to match the top thread, and we're stitching with white. Well, my bobbin thread is white, so I'm just going to leave it in there. And we're also sewing with 40 weight thread. I wonder if I have any of the 60 weight open. I don't think I do. Not here. I have it at home. It's worth having a few colors if you do projects that have small lettering. I have like the basic colors, black, white, red, yellow, green, blues, a couple blues and a purple. All right, so I am going to go ahead and let this run. So this is our lettering. I'm going to step away for 1 second and I'll be right back. Kimberbell project, it's every month as the do it. So, I haven't watched the All right, so the next step sews the placement line for the metal snaps, the traditional that you're gonna sew on snaps. If you are going to do that, you can go ahead and sew this step. If you are gonna use the cam snaps, we're gonna skip this step because you don't need it. They won't be in the right place anyway. So if you're not sure how to do that, so these are just the two little dots. You're gonna go to layout. Oops, no, you're not gonna go layout. You're gonna go down here to needle plus minus. So down here at the bottom, needle plus minus, and you're just gonna arrow down one color. And then you should be seeing what looks like that. If you are gonna sew the metal ones, then you can go ahead and stitch those out. We'll wait for you for a moment. But if you're not, don't, because they're not gonna be in the right place. You'll end up just picking them out later. All right. So while we may have some people sewing those steps, I'm going to go ahead and trim these while we give them a couple minutes to sew that step if they're going to sew the metal ones on. And from here on out, no pressing is going to be done without slipping a piece of the paper that covered the vinyl in between the two layers, because this is where you could very easily fuse your bag together. All right. Okay, so the next step, you're probably looking at this like, what the heck? So with the next step, what we're doing, we've done this step. We're taking this part, the front, and we're going to stick it in the hole here. So here's where we are now. We're essentially going to take this, the hoop's got to come off, and we're going to stick this to the back of the hoop. So let me show you. I'm going to move to the table so I can get a little bit closer up. You're almost done. So you may have noticed that I actually positioned mine pretty close up here. If you have a lot up here, I positioned it close so I wouldn't have to trim it when I want to grade my seams. So if you have a lot up here, then go ahead and trim that a little bit so that when we go to turn it, you don't have all of that vinyl in there. And then I'm going to take the rest of it and I'm going to stick it in the hole and pull it through to the back. So you should be looking something like this. If you're bunching over here, you need to cut that hole a little bit wider than the 1/2 inch requirement. Watch, if you just give it a snip, it relaxes and lets that piece lay down flat. All right, so I'm just pulling this to the back and I'm going to tape it down. You can see really well too from this side. All right, see how this is like that? That's not actually sitting flat in there. So I'm just going to make that, I'm just going to cut that just a little bit longer. And then now that piece of fabric can lay down flat. All right. So that's what we should be looking like. And again, from here on out, we're not pressing anything without putting our protective paper sheets in between, because we will fuse our bag shut. It's not pretty. All right, so I've got this taped down. Let's see what we're doing next. We're almost done. All right, so the next thing is, so we're gonna pull that. Oh, we didn't press. My bad. So I'm gonna pull this up to press. Put my iron back on, and I'm going to be very, very careful that I keep everything that's going to, that could possibly be affected. I'm going to keep it. So I'm pulling this up, tape out of the way. Oh, okay. I'm not pressing. So I'm just pressing, I'm folding this up, not down. So I'm folding this up. So I have like the little hole there. Sorry about that, ladies. I kind of lost track here. All right. All right, so this is what the back of your hoop should be looking like. And then I'm gonna take my my bag back fabric, which is the white, and lay it on top. So then I should be covering everything. So we did that part, we did this, we flipped it to the back. And now this should be taped down. Believe we have, yeah, we have a couple more things going around. Okay, so taping this down. All right, so I've got this taped down. Let's see where I'm going next. Turn the hoop to the back, pull the lining back up, top of the hoop. Turn the hoop so the front, place the bag back fabric right side down, completely covering the project, smooth and tape into place. That's good. Flipping the page over to the last page. So the next thing we're going to do is stitch the bag back tack down. And that's going to be done. Again, double check if I misled you that this is what the back of your hoop should look like. We're not stitching this part down yet. It's taped up and out of the way. We're just sewing this part down. And I'm going to stitch the bag back tack down line. That's going to go like this. All right, let's see what we got. Now we're going to bring that back down. So we're going to remove the hoop from the machine, turn the hoop to the back, remove the tape, and pull the lining back fabric down towards the bottom of the hoop. The wrong side of our lining fabric should be up. So front side of my hoop, turning it over, bringing my lining fabric down. And it should be now right sides together with the other piece. Taping that down. So now this is the back of my hoop. There's the hole. This is the front of my hoop. So what's coming next is the final stitch out, or no, yeah, the final stitch outline. All right, so we're looking at stitch 17. Number 17 is going to leave a hole in the bottom, and that's for turning. But before we do that, we're going to trim, but we're not going to trim just at 1/4 inch. We're going to trim our lining fabric closer than 1/4 inch, and the rest can be 1/4 inch if it makes you feel more comfortable. But I'm going to go in there and I'm going to trim the lining and I'm going to trim the stabilizer, and then I'm going to take a ruler and trim what's left at 1/4 inch. So this is our last stitch down, stitch out. All right.
show us.
I'm gonna back up and restitch a little bit here. I don't know if you heard it, but I heard it when it made like that hiccupy sound. So I'm gonna take that bunched up stitching out, happens to all of us, and back up a little bit and redo right up in through here. It's good everywhere else. I'm just tacking down that. Everyone else was fine. Just this last row at the top wasn't so good.
You're sitting in the back.
Oh, I'm teaching a class. All right. Okay. All right, so now the trimming and the grading and the pressing. Okay, so I'm going to pop this out of the hoop because we're done stitching. And let me see how close I can actually get with my camera and have you still be able to see.
Which time? What does it say when you look at the tire press?
All right, so I'm going to get rid of some of the stabilizer just so I'm not dragging it all with me as I go along here. And that's my normal. I just get rid of it because otherwise I'm trying to cut fabric. I'm trying to cut vinyl at this point. I'm trying to cut stabilizer and I just don't need all of it. Okay. So I'm going to do the bottom of the bag last, and I'm going to do that last because that has a hole in it for me to turn. And the hole begins with the vinyl. So I don't want to cut that too close because if I cut it too close right in that turning area, then I won't have enough to tuck in to stitch to close the bottom. All right. So I'm going to begin by doing my side. So I'm just going to fold this out of the way, and I can see that I can trim this up here, this vinyl. And I'm going to take a little bit of the actual, you know, the bag front with me because it's like stitched down here. So I want to get in there. And I'm going to go in pretty close here. And I'm just going to trim that like to 1/8 of an inch. And you'll see I got just the front still here. The back is what I got. And that's what I want. The back, just the part with the lining, with the vinyl on it. And then this, I'm going to try to get just a little bit closer. You'll be amazed at how much easier it'll be to turn the bag. And how, even as, I don't know, if you got the small 5x7, then you know that that's going to be a bugger because that's going to be one of those hard to trim kind of things. All right, so I've got this out of the way. And then I'm going to fold the sides here because here's my two sides. This is what happens if we press and we don't protect these, they're going to meld together, making it harder to turn the bag. And so I'm going to begin by trimming them to about 1/8 of an inch. On both sides. I just don't want that bulk in the seam there. And having uneven seam allowances is actually going to help me to turn the bag. Okay, so that one's looking pretty good. I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm going to do the other side. I'm saving the bottom till last. I'm saving the, see, like, look how much there is here. Even at 1/4 of an inch, that's still gonna be way too much. It's gonna stick together. It's gonna make it hard for me to turn.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my stabilizer. I'm gonna get rid of that as well. So I'm left now with just what's left here for the white fabric, the bag front and back. And that doesn't have anything on it. Doesn't have any stabilizer iron to it. It's just fabric. So it's going to be a little bit easier. All right. How's this looking? Let's get rid of this piece of stabilizer here.
So I'm closed on Monday. So like, I'm
All right. So now what I'm left with is the white fabric. So now if I want, and this down here. So let me draw a line so you can see where, this is where the stitching ends on the lining fabric. Okay, this is where my hole is to turn. I can trim the rest of this. I can trim that up. I'm gonna stop before that happens though, because I want to make sure I have enough to actually turn it in. And I'm going to make one little snip towards where that stitching stopped. Little things, you'll be amazed at how much easier this will be. I'm going to stop a little before, and then I'm going to do a diagonal cut when I get done here, right into that, to where the stitching stopped. That gives me extra to actually tuck in there. And I don't need it quite that. 1/4 inch will be fine on what's left here. So let me get the other side to match, and 1/4 inch will be good because that will give me a 1/4 inch to navigate inside to the inside of the bag. And I'm also trimming out the stabilizer. So what you should be looking at if you're doing my method, what you should be looking at now is just the fabric that shows on the outside, the white, all the way around. And then, of course, we haven't trimmed anything here. So I'm gonna get rid of my mess here. Yeah, I'm messy. No doubt about it. I bet a lot of you are like neat and tidy. I'm not. The whole room sews when I sew. All right. And no rotary cutter. Hang on. I think I'm just going to do regular scissors because I don't know what happened to the rotary cutter that was back here. All right, so 1/4 of an inch. I can probably eyeball that. This I want this just a little closer here. All right. 1/4 of an inch. I'll leave that there. That's about 1/4 of an inch. So what we end up with is the white fabric is the one that shows from the outside. So when you're grading, if you do it even in a situation where you don't have vinyl like this, the one that the seam line that's supposed to be longer is the what they call the public side. In other words, the side that you're going to be looking at when you're done. And then the same here. I'm going to get rid of the stabilizer.
No, I like.
Okay. And I'll trim this a little bit because I don't need quite that much. All right, and the same here. I'm not going to notch into this because this seam, I have the end points here and I don't have them on this side. So I'm not going to actually notch into that. I'm just going to leave it as a straight. You can do it all the way across at 1/4 of an inch. All right. All right, so now trimming your corners. Please, if you want really nice, wonderful, precise corners. And if you've taken anything from me before, you know that I am not a proponent of cutting across and then cutting in. It makes a nipple when you have to try to turn it. So I just do a all the way to, but not through the seam, just cut the corner. All the way to, but not through the stitching, cut the corner. Just cut it at a 45-degree angle. Same up here, just cut the corner. All right, so now's when a little bit of heat's going to come into play, because what you could do with this too, we have to turn this, we have to get our nice little sharp corners in here. We need to warm our vinyl up a little bit. We need to warm it up so that we don't, so it makes it easier to turn. Sadly, I don't have a blow dryer here because that's normally what I would do, because right now I'm going to play hell trying to get the paper into the corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my big piece of paper. I'm going to just make a little piece here with this piece. I'm not going to press the whole thing. I just want to warm my corners right now, because that's the thing that's going to be hard to turn. So I want to get this paper into that corner there so I don't fuse the layers together. Don't press if you don't put anything there. Please promise me you won't, because it will not, it will be kind of, it will be sad when you get further, it'll be sad. All right, so I have that one there, and I'm just going to warm it up. So warm it up doesn't mean press, it just means warm it up. All right, so now that that's warm, what I can do is I'm going to put my fingernail, I've got my finger inside. Actually, I got my thumb inside because my thumb's a bigger finger, and I'm just going to fold my corners together and I'm just going to push it in. All right, look at that. Vinyl, everything, all those corners already pretty sharp. All right, so the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to slip that piece of paper in there. I'm just warming it up. You can use an old blow dryer, works really well for this. You don't have to have an iron, but since I forgot to bring that, just warming it up a little bit, not gluing it together. Thumb goes to the inside. I fold, it doesn't matter, they don't have to be folded to the same direction, but because all of those layers are a different length, it makes it much easier to turn those corners out. All right, so now I'm going to do the wiggle, the hippie shake, the wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And that is trying to get the rest of this bag out through this little teeny tiny hole. And you have to be patient. You have to go slow, because if you push too hard, too fast, what you're going to do is it's going to tear away from that back stitch that's actually holding the hole. So just be patient, go slow. This is going to be the harder part of the bag because we're pulling everything through this hole.
Yeah.
This is otherwise known as birthing a bag. You can see the similarities, right? Small hole, big bag. All right. All right, so I have corners here too, but they're not as sharp. So I'm just going to use my finger to work that out. All right, then don't shove a point turner in there, because I guarantee you're going to poke a hole in it. What I like to use is this OESD one, because it has like this big ball on one end. So I don't poke into the corner. I start on the seam line. So there's the ball there, and just work it through till I get to the corner. And the same on the other side. The ball is here. I'm just pushing it into the corner. Since my seam allowances are graded, it's going to be easier to get a nice smooth transition in there. All right. You're almost there. So I'm going to fold this part now inside on the stitching line.
Just want to hit Sacramento. Big traffic circle, 3 o'clock.
All right. Look at how nice that is.
Kind of.
All right.
Very wide, but I did.
So I'm going to give that a little tiny press. So guess what I have to do? Both sides are on the outside, so I'm okay. I don't have to put anything in there, but I am going to cover it with the paper. Again, parchment is your best friend with this kind of stuff. Any kind of vinyl, really. Parchment's a good medium for heat, heat setting and everything else, pressing on vinyl. Because it just doesn't get, the iron just doesn't quite get as hot as if you put a pressing sheet on it. Okay, let's get this guy looking a little bit more pressed. Oh, look at that. Let me trim these little seams here. These little threads. All right, we're doing it again. Are they warm? If they're not warm, warm them up. Thumb goes into the corner. And then take your fingernails and just push it pointy. Push the point. There you go. There's that nice sharp point. There's that nice sharp point. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Look at it's easier that time to do that turn. All right, so look on the inside. Make sure that where you turned it inside, where you poked those seams in, so that they were pointing in on the bottom. Because I'm gonna finish mine on the sewing machine. So look down there. If you're seeing that yours are still folded, like mine are still folded, then you're good to stitch. If not, then open it up again and fold them back in there. And again, you can use this guy if you feel like that sharp corner isn't sharp enough, but you're not poking into the corner. You're starting here and you're just running that little ball towards the center. All right. Now I want to press this really flat so it looks nice and beautiful. This is where it can go south. We got to put this in here, because if we don't, and we hit this with heat, we're going to stick these two pieces of vinyl together. So let's get this cut to the size I need it so that I can slip it inside there. There, look at that. And now, and see, I can see a little edges here, so I'm just going to stick this here. Now I can press. Again, no steam. Watch out for the apple. Don't fry your apple at this point. That'd be sad. I almost did it.
So I'm waiting on you. You're next.
All right, you should still be able to open the bag up. Look at how cute that is. All right, so I'm going to fold this forward so I know where the snaps are going to be. And again, I'm going to cover it because I want to press it. Put that there just in case. So what the purpose of these little, I call them pressing blocks now, but what they are really is little clappers. It's been in the sewing business and industry for like 1,000 years, since the very first sewing machine. But what it does is it's a hardwood, and its job is to suck the heat up and leave a nice crisp crease behind. So this is ready for me to do my snaps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the snaps that go on the front first, and it's going to make sense because I don't know where these are going to go until I know where these are going to go. And they're more important because they have to fit. All right. So I'm going to grab my cam snaps, and your kits should have had 2 complete sets, just in case you have an uh-oh or a oh no. All right, so each bag, oh, no, you just have 1 set, I'm sorry. Each bag is gonna take 4 of the ends, and you could turn these over. You're gonna see they are different, all right? So look at that. You have an innie and an outie. You need an outie to go in an innie for the bag to snap. All right, so the technical term, according to the cam snaps, is you have on the top, you're going to have a cap and a stud. So the cap and the stud means a cap and an outie. And then you're going to have a socket and a cap. So the socket means innie. So in order for them to snap together, each side needs to have 1 of each of these 2 pieces. So let's be careful how we do that. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a little, well, it won't matter because I'm going to poke the hole. So right now I'm just going to take my snap. It's got a pointy on it, and I'm just going to make a mark of where I might want my snap. All right. And then I'm going to make a little mark with my pen because it's going to get poked out anyway. So I'm just putting it down there and poking, and it leaves a little indentation. All right. And then I'm going to put those on first before I mark for these. So I'm going to take my my hole punch, turn the bag over, and I'm going to use this hole punch to punch a hole right here. So I have to move the camera up so that I can twist. But I'm just positioning the hole right above that, and I'm just twisting. And you'll see that I've got a nice little hole there. You don't need to punch it all the way through, but I did. So there's my 2 positioning. So holes are there for my cam snap. So watch how easy it is. Now I'm just pushing, the cam snap can fit nicely in there. So look at the final way it's supposed to go. So right now we're going to have 2 caps on the top here, and we're going to have the studs. So you're looking for this guy, the outie. You're looking for 2 studs and 2 outies. All right. I'm going to grab my cam squeezer. The right side of the cam, the stud, will always fit down in that bowl like this, only on the fabric. So it has to be down. And then the other one goes on the other side. So I'm going to do this one. I've got the outie. I'm putting my outie down. And then I'm putting the top in the bowl. So the top is in the bowl back here. And then I'm just going to squeeze. And when I squeeze, it seals that cap. I'm going to do it again. I want the cap on the outside. I want the outie on the inside. The cap is going to fit in the black bowl, and then I'm going to squeeze, and that's set. All right. So now I have to figure out where the receiving end goes. So I'm going to press down, and usually I can create a little bit of a mark with the outie that tells me where the other one needs to go to receive it. And look at that. There's one there. And there's one there. All right, so for this, guess what I have to do? I have to kind of turn the bag inside out a little bit if I want to punch this hole with my hole punch. This one's easier because it's not so many layers. See, a lot of you have had this tool with your every machine that you've ever had and you never knew what it was for. All right, so let's look at this. This is going to close over, which means that I need this on the top, on the outside, because if I put the cap on the outside, nothing's going to happen. I need this on the outside. So this is the front. This goes on the outside. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to slip the cap in the inside of the bag there and position this on the outside. Same thing with the press. The cap goes in the bowl and I'm just going to squeeze. It didn't go all the way through. This one could use a little bit more of a poke. Squeeze. All right, so my little snack bag is done. And there we go. All right, so I hope you guys all had a great time. I hope you learned a couple of tricks to help you the next time you get a project like this. I think to me, the grading of the seams is what's always going to make it amazingly easier for you to actually turn the bags inside out. So, and I do that with anything that I make. I always grade. Doesn't matter if it's a Kimberbell project or a handbag. I always grade those seam allowances and get that bulk out of there so that you can get an easy turn. You are great. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I hope everybody has really cute snack bags. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, if you've never graded before, it's going to be really an eye opener for you on that. So, all right, have fun, ladies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.